Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast channel. My name is Jed and we are reading Sock and Jesus. Of course, you can see it above me here. You can't see it when I zoom in. Ooh. We have been putting together a hypothesis that we are using to help answer the puzzle from this book. What is the new category of man that dooms all other ones? What's the way of being that we can move into that makes Jesus and Socrates even a follower of you? Why is the volume louder than last time? So what's this new class of man? And can we use everything we've been building in our understanding of what exists and the model of thinking to create a hypothesis that might explain what this new way of being is? What we've been given is man's new way of being is not reflecting on himself as a human, but as a god. What in the heck does that mean? We have been building a model based on our understanding of metaphysics and our understanding of the history of philosophy. And last episode was a banger, by the way. Check that one out. This is the end result of our work. We had asked the question, well, what is understanding? Because the book has reminded us there is a principle of reality called structural similarity, or as terms vary, relations stay the same. In other words, analogy. Analogy unfolds through reality. So by understanding, we also understand the nature of experience, perception, existence, and dreams. So we are reflecting on the model of understanding that understanding uses. And as we know, if you reflect on the model of something, you can perfect it. You gain the excellence of that particular model, of that activity. So the highest kind of functioning a human can do in the physical world is, well, think. Isn't that what makes us more evolved than the other animals? We can think. Or more accurately, we can use understanding. So what is understanding? What's the model of understanding that is used when we use understanding? Well, we recognize that there are three primary categories of terms that are like, you can ask the question, well, how do I make a Lego spaceship? And someone will say, well, there are three kinds of Lego pieces. There are 3-block tall, well, 3-divot Lego pieces. There are single-divot Lego pieces, and there are 2-divot Lego pieces. Now, of course, there's lots more than that in Lego, but for our analogy, this is what we're using. Everything that you understand, you recognize as a whole of parts. But this is also everything you've ever experienced is a whole of parts. Everything that you have ever perceived. If you don't recognize the whole, you won't be able to recognize it or perceive it. That's why naming is important. And if you don't recognize the whole, well, that's called camouflage. You don't see the thing. And then we can, all of these questions, we could wonder, how does this also apply to dreams? And the blackboard, like that. Can we understand our dreams as a whole of parts? Now, everything that you think about, or if you want to understand something, you have to understand what it's the same as and what it's different as. Everything you've perceived, same thing. Everything you've experienced. This chicken is the same as this flamingo in that they are both stuffies. Look at them. But they're different in that this one has a has longer legs. Look. And this one has little legs. Feet. Oops. And we can make that same kind of reflection for all of the pairs of Lego pieces that we use for understanding. They are like each other in that they both sit on my desk, but they're unlike each other because one of them's an alcoholic. I won't tell you which one. Oops.
Hey!
Okay. Rest and motion. Infinite, unlimited, and limited. Same sorts of things. So we have a set of pairs. Well, let's do it. Let's go through them. Rest. Are they sitting still or are they moving around the room? Everything that you've seen has either been at rest or in motion. Everything that you've seen has either been limited in some way or is infinite, like a series of numbers that goes on forever. Space, they say, is infinite. And everything you've experienced has either been in time or has been the experience of your soul separated from the body, and you experience what is out of time, which is, of course, what philosophy is for, because the physical world is the world of becoming, but the world of being is what we can what we study in philosophy. Now, you might be familiar with Stoicism because a lot of the Gym Bro podcasts and Red Pill podcasts and philosopher bros who go on that stuff on YouTube talk about Stoicism as though it's philosophy. Now, this was mentioned earlier in the book. The book, Socrates said to Jesus, oh no, that's, people say it's philosophy, but it's not. Because it's materialism. Philosophy is the study of this realm of being, which is out of time. All of these ideas have an expression in time as adjectives. Whole is an adjective to describe something, but you've never seen it as a substantive or a noun. You've never been walking down the street and said, hello, whole. Well, it sounds like an insult that you'd make to a woman if you're a sexist.
Oh my fuck.
You wouldn't say that's a terrible thing.
But I thought this was actually kind of interesting.
But it is interesting. All of these ideas exist out of time, but have their expression as causes or forces or adjectives or principles that apply to things in time. So therefore, understanding is based on a non-physical model of these kinds of, or these ideas. So its existence is also in the realm of being. This can be confusing for those who's never had an experience or remembered an experience of being out of their physical senses or out of their body or prior to their incarnation. But if you have had that experience, well, what we are doing now is understanding what it is you experienced, a realm in which these ideas, the greater, whole, and the lesser, come together into a model, and it's that model that is mind. Therefore, what makes us better as human beings is using our mind, and what makes us bad is when we are ignorant or use our mind poorly. So understanding, being the highest functioning a human can do in time, is the reflection of this model of mind. But you can experience that model in that experience separating your soul from the body, which is the purpose of philosophy or dialectic and any other yoga, because it allows you to directly apprehend mind itself. You've got a mind, don't you want to see it? By the way, if you do, it's awesome. Beauty, justice, bliss, etc. And the greater that you experience it, the greater you can use it as a model for your activities. If this is the model of justice, don't you want to be a just person? Don't you want a just world? If this is the model of beauty, don't you want to make beautiful things? And the application of that model in time we are seeing is understanding. Now, what that means is, if you understand the model of understanding, you can direct your conversations in a similar way. As we've seen in this conversation, Socrates says, hey, if there's going to be a conversation between you and me, Jesus, we need someone who can speak for the whole of us and also understand all of our parts. Then after they reflected on that, they talked about, well, how are we the same as each other, says Socrates, the master of the dialectic. In other words, he's leading the conversation. How are we the same as each other, and what makes us different? So you can guide your conversations this way in order to benefit someone. What do we mean by benefit someone? Oh, don't we mean give them benefits here? A goodness? Make them more beautiful? Make them more just? Could we equally say remove a false model of justice that they may be carrying that's making them unjust? Or a false model of beauty that makes them attracted to terrible people or doing ugly things? Maybe they're seeking something they think is their goodness but is actually harming themselves and others. So in other words, we can use these pairs of self-ers. We call them self-ers because they have a self-existence in being, and they're understandable, so that's the self-logos. The logos. The logos is the name for that model of intelligibility. And it's the activity, reason, conversation, dialectic. So we can use these self-er pairs to structure our thinking in order to bring someone to these self-er ones or monads. Beauty. Perfect their beauty, perfect their justice, perfect their goodness. Or we can use it to help them uncover the false version of these. People have a problem because they are seeking something that's unjust, but it appears to be just because of the model that they have been copying. What we are learning is the true model, but I haven't found any families talking about this at a young age to their children. So instead of learning the true model of beauty and excellence and justice, and reality is in there too, their parents imitate a knower of those things, and it's that imitation that they take as what's truly beautiful. So we say people are attracted to partners that look like their parents or act like their parents. People will vote for Trump if their parents were like Trump, so a false model of justice. People think that they are actually being a great person and a loyal member of the tribe if they're racist, a false model of benefit. We need to hurt all the brown people. That's how we'll benefit. What an unjust way of thinking. What an ugly way of thinking. What a harmful way of thinking. So now we have a list of monads or ones that we use for understanding. We use these pairs to reach this. So these are the Lego pieces we use for understanding. But we've also recognized that there is a distorted version of it. In other words, a distorted, a broken, a fake, a pseudo model. All of these are words that can be unified in one word, lesser. Whether it's fake or reflection or distortion, that describes, the word that puts all of those together is lesser. So we can use these pairs to structure our questions and reflection, self-reflection, ousia, and questions and answers, giving us a curious state of mind and also putting words on what we're seeing and thinking. That's logos. To purify the lesser the fake, the distorted, and to reach the greater, the actual model of understanding mind itself. Giving us our excellence, giving us what benefits us, experienced as pure beauty. So as Diotima points out, it's that kind of relationship where you and your partner both love beauty and don't want to settle for anything less than the highest or greatest. That if you're loving that and you have logos, you can go through this process of purifying your false model, or belief is the name for the false model, based on imitation and appearance, the lesser, the distorted. Purify your false beliefs about beauty and perfect your true understanding of beauty, which culminates in that experience of beauty itself as the truth of reality, says Diotima to Socrates. He went ahead and did it. Good for him. And good for us. By the way, Diotima mentions, hang on a second, when you reach the greater model of the actual truth of beauty and reality and justice, as the third member of your relationship that both people focus on in their love and logos-based relationship, that's the beginning of the development of true excellence. So you might have reached the truth, but even that whole of all parts had to be made from something. Meaning there is an even greater model. In this Venn diagram of all of those pairs, whole and part, there has to be a section of the whole that intersects with parts in that Venn diagram to give us that whole of all parts, or that's called mind. Our ignorance lives down here because your false model, in order for you to be a believer, you have to abandon or reject or deny understanding and knowing. If you understand something, why would you believe someone else? If you know it, how can you be duped by some preacher or parent or king or politician? So the cause of our human ignorance, which is the cause of our injustice, our lack of justice or our pseudo-justice, cause of all of our problems and suffering, is a cognitive function that's an imitation of knowing and understanding, but actually is a model called belief and an activity usually called materialism or strict dualism that's in opposition to our actual benefit. As much as the preachers try to convince us, you actually benefit by giving me all your money. You fucking don't. As much as a Christian or a Muslim or any religious person will shout at you at the street, if only we were all in the same religion, the world could be a better place. That's not true. It's the opposite. Because religion is always subjugation through belief and will always be in opposition to understanding and knowing. It's fucking stupid. There's only two professions where we allow belief. You can't believe your way into being a doctor, believe your way into being a mechanic, believe your way into being a pilot, but you can believe your way into scamming people from their money by saying, I know what God is. Religion. You can believe your way into scamming people and killing people through politics. Kings and clergy. Now that's the or the universalization of our own personal ignorance, because the way in which we scam others, the way that we think God is based on our own beliefs from our childhood experiences. Meaning, if you can reflect with the dialectic, with the use of understanding on the history of your own problems and ignorance, you can trace it back to its origin scene and solve your problem by addressing in words in the dialectic what you didn't, or what there was not the condition for using words to do back then. In other words, all of our problems are a kind of solution, pseudo-solution to a problem that we faced growing up, but no longer applies, and in fact now is the cause of all of our problems, individually or projected onto politics or religion, universalized. Which we are recognizing is, hey, this isn't just an opinion, it's these monads or ones applied to its lesser. And we can understand it with these pairs. You have to accept a limit to be a believer, and you're in opposition to anyone free. Let's kill all the non-Muslims. Let's kill all the non-Christians. Let's kill all the non-Catholics. Let's kill all the philosophers. They are always in motion. They can never be at peace. There's always another infidel to murder, woman to subjugate, other race to enslave. They are apart and they want to blow up the world, blow up the whole, so Jesus comes back or some bullshit. In other words, these lesser of the pairs in conflict with the greater of the pairs, that's the model of belief. Underneath that, we saw the activity is there is a kind of activity that says you can't experience those greater things. You can't experience the model. Only God can, says believers, or it's woo-woo and fairy talk, says materialists. Strict dualism. It's drawing a line down here. Understanding, of course, is what we are doing here. Understanding the whole of understanding and learning how to use it intelligently and caringly or providentially to anyone who is a part, any problem, either in purifying any lesser version of this, solving problems, or in perfecting the greater, reaching excellence, reaching benefit. The two versions of the dialectic. The use of this model of understanding, through caring, supportive, friendly, use of questions, systematically, following the structure, to purify the lesser version of these, or to perfect the greater version of these. To purify the lesser is called philosophical midwifery. To perfect the greater is called philosophy or Platonic philosophy, not Stoic philosophy. Stoicism is here. Stoicism takes the language of this and only applies it to the physical world. That's why it's appealing to the many. That's why it's appealing on podcasts and on YouTube and on Red Pill, Joe Rogan, Jim Bro stuff. Courage and wisdom isn't about experiencing this and holding on to the logos as you purify your false belief, because that requires courage, letting go of all of your images of yourself based on belief that you have identified with your whole life, letting go of this way of being that's a kind of solution to problems. I know how to manipulate people through this mask, but if I have to drop it, that's scary. What will I do? Maybe I won't be good enough. Maybe I'm just a small bean in a bad noodle. You won't know until you do it. That requires courage. Now, instead of that, Stoics say, well, no, courage is just about doing push-ups or getting up at 5 a.m. to do a ice bath or something. And wisdom is how to grift people in hustle culture to make the big bucks. Wisdom is knowledge isn't the direct apprehension of this model of understanding, which it actually is. That's not what knowledge is. Knowledge is power over people. Have you heard that? Knowledge is power. Fuck off. That's wrong. That's Stoicism. Or the activity of the lesser in opposition to the greater. It's only going to do harm in principle. And it's an activity based on what you think reality is, and it's not actually what reality is. Someone taught you this shit. or modeled this way of being to you. So the model is called belief, and the activity we can call strict dualism, because it says we can't have the higher, or materialism. And we have the first spam.
You need
for
to
the day.
flood these platforms with fake people.
Spam.
And this is spam. But you shut up for a second. You're not
real spam.
Robots will replace that, and that's terrifying. I hate to have to tell you this. That was fake. That was AI.
You're a fake AI spammer, and we say to you,
Bitch.
banned. I only ban the spammers. Ban the spammers. Not people who are genuinely sharing reflection on truth and understanding. Emma.
It's a total shit show.
Beefgate 2025. Broke the internet, some are saying. So, by understanding the model of understanding, we can perfect our activity based on that model. And that activity is called understanding, and it's the highest functioning we can do as a human being in time. Also, as we are using our activity, understanding here in mind, this overlap of whole and parts, to reflect on the model of understanding, it's a kind of meditation. So as we are learning and perfecting our activity in the physical world through mastering the art of the dialectic, we are at the same time engaged in meditation. The author of this book, Pierre Grimes, did an interview the year before he passed away. And the interviewer asked him a question. Is there a way of combining meditation and philosophy? Is there a philosophy of meditation? Or is there a meditation and philosophy? And he kind of ruined the premise of what was going to be a series of these videos by saying, no, there isn't one of the other, because actual philosophy is meditation. It's the same thing. It's the paradigm of meditation. All other meditations take a piece of what we're doing and reject the rest. It's a form of interpretation. The book that we've been reading is saying, hey, by the way, there are many ways people can reject truth. One of them is the patchwork model, where you take a piece and instead of dropping your false beliefs down here, down at this part area, you take a patch of the new and you patch it in. That's the Kabbalah. They take a piece of Parmenides in philosophy and they attach it to their religious tradition, Sephardic religious tradition, and they make the Kabbalah. You can find examples. Other examples of that. So, what are we doing in the dialectic? Asking questions, openness, curiosity. Is there a spiritual tradition that just takes that as a part and rejects the rest of the logos? Yes, that's called a koan. What is the sound of one hand clapping? What is mu? Oh, mysterious. What else are we doing? We're focusing on something that exists eternally. Are there yogas or meditations or spiritual traditions that take a piece? Yes. Focus on this candle. Focus on this painting. Okay, that's the focus part. But on something that exists eternally? Well, for some people they say, focus on this painting of our dear guru, because that person is eternal. But of course that's again a distortion. So focus, but what all of them that take a piece, what are they all lacking? This. The model of understanding, the logos. Therefore, whatever they might be able to touch and experience, they won't be able to understand. They won't be able to perfect their experiences by reflecting on the model, and they won't be able to purify whatever has blocked them from that experience in each moment of their life because they lack the logos. Meaning this understanding of the model of understanding is the paradigm or principle or model of spirituality as well. In other words, there's no difference between perfecting learning or philosophy and meditation. As Pierre said in that interview as well, it's the same thing. Perfection and purification. So, our pairs give us the structure of the pieces, the ones give us the ultimates, and all of these are non-physical, all of these are out of time, but they apply to in time. In fact, our understanding of the model is the greatest part whole, because it contains the greatest number of parts. So the ultimate experience possible is mind turning out around to know itself, self-reflection, just like what we're doing here, only here we're doing it through understanding, which is in time, whereas knowledge is actually knowing the whole model out of time all at once. So while physical things can't turn around and connect completely, non-physical things like mind or consciousness can. In other words, a mind can know itself completely with every part touching every other part. That's why it's knowing everything, bliss, perfect beauty, and stuff like that. All of these monads, stuff like that. All of these monads, I meant to say.
Hey man, wouldn't some kind of future where people have all their whatever basic needs met of shelter, all this crap, and they could do whatever the hell they want, wouldn't that be good? No, it wouldn't.
Interesting. We disagree, Mr. Brown. To that we say...
Like, literally, suck my dick, dude.
Yeah, dude. So, purifying the lesser, perfecting the greater, philosophy and philosophical midwifery, dream analysis is needed for both, because we get negative states of mind playing out in a drama in our dream. We get greater states of mind playing out in a drama in our dream. That drama is nothing other than the clues to what you need for the purification of the lesser and the perfection of the greater. So dream analysis is itself is perhaps the greatest kind of spiritual method, because you not only get to re-experience those states of mind through that questioned reflection about it, but you also are being asked questions about it to perfect your understanding. It's one thing to have a glimpse, it's another to fully unify with it and integrate it. That's why understanding is needed, making dream analysis perhaps the greatest of all activities. And helps us understand why Socrates' contribution to the lineage of philosophy was to say, hey, dreams. You need dreams. You need to reflect on your dreams. Learn to understand your dreams. So, this simple model of Lego pieces allows us to identify the cause of all human problems, ignorance, which is nothing other than a kind of activity based on the lesser that doesn't connect with the whole or the greater. So materialism or whatever, there is no model, the establishment left. There is no model of justice. Just let anyone do whatever. And who gives a fuck if everyone starves or gets murdered by fascists? The establishment left. There is belief, the establishment right, the right-wingers, the fascists, the Nazis, those sorts of people, the conservatives. What are they conserving? Their ignorant belief. So we can even number them. The fifth way of thinking, strict dualism, materialism, reductionism. There is nothing meaningful. It's just a reduce it to parts. A Rembrandt is $5 of paint on an $8 canvas, nothing more. Happiness, meaning, insight, that's just chemicals squirting in your brain, bro. 4, the cognitive function of belief. That's currently ruling our world, because these strict dualists pave the way for them by rejecting any model or any sameness or any way of unifying our species. So 5 and 4. 3 is understanding. 2 is directly apprehending out of time the model of understanding. And now we have number 1. Now what we can say is we would have number 1 as the activity of number question mark, maybe 10, 0. Now why are we using these numbers? Because there is Socrates' teacher Parmenides has already outlined a complete dialectic of, or a full, not complete, very, very good, let's say, dialectic on all of these. He starts with the first hypothesis of the self, then the second hypothesis, which is a dialectic exploration of that being itself, using all of these terms. There's a dialectic. The third hypothesis is understanding, but also it describes, because understanding is the whole and parts. We look at the model as a whole and we relate beneficially to the parts, but that's also each moment. Each moment there is an unfolding from the whole into the parts and a return. So the third hypothesis also describes how time works. Fourth belief, 5, strict dualism or materialism. But there are some puzzles in the Parmenides about, hang on a second, is there a hypothesis that he's leaving out? Now, because we've already used 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll have to use 10, because he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then he says for all of those, for knowledge, understanding, belief, and dualism, strict dualism, you could have a rejection of them. So if materialism or strict dualism says we're only parts, you can have nihilism, which says there isn't even that. So for each of these, but that's the dialectic, right? When you do a dialectic, you have a question, you explore what if it is and what if it isn't. So if these are, let's take away number 1 for a second. If these are 4 cognitive functions about what happens if reality is, you could also say, well, what's the equivalent 6, 7, 8, and 9 that says, well, there is no reality? Nihilism, rejection of 5. So we've already got 9 on the board. So what's our model of self? We'll make that number 10. Because using this model, we can see just as ignorance is the model and activity based on the lesser of the understanding pairs, the self-ers, that is in rejection of the greater, or the greater of the terms. We hate the whole, we hate sameness, we don't want to be the same, we're racist, we're sexist, we're fuckers.
You just blow in from Stupid Town?
We've just blown in from Stupid Town.
I don't know if you know this, but like weird dudes exist everywhere.
All those weird dudes. That is the cause of all of the lesser, distorted versions of this: injustice, ugliness, destruction, chaos, fuckery. Fuck them.
You just blow in from Stupid Town?
Always blowing in from Stupid Town. That's ignorance. Wisdom, of course, is the model of knowledge and understanding. The use of understanding to reflect on the model perfects the activity of the model, perfects our understanding, but at the same time is meditation. We are meditating, we're doing it. But that means there has to be a section of the whole that is greater than even the section of the whole of all parts. Ultimate. Lesser, greater, ultimate. That's our triad of terms that we use for understanding. And a good way of seeing that is mean analogy. As Diotima teaches Socrates, she is the greater term and he is the lesser, teacher to student. But then if Socrates functions as a mean analogy to pass on the teaching to us, now he is the greater and we are the lesser. Which means in participating in a sharing your learning, sharing the dialectic, passing it forward, Socrates has become like Diotima. Likeness. He is functioning the same as Diotima. He's also made us like Diotima if we are good students and complete our work. Bringing the extremes into a whole. But when it's a whole, there's no difference. In other words, all of these terms that are also involved in this, we're a whole, but it's not a whole in that normally everything we've experienced is a whole because it's not missing its parts. It's the whole of the puzzle because none of the puzzle pieces are missing. It's the whole Lego spaceship because you're not missing any of the Lego pieces. But this is a whole that's not based on parts. In other words, you could replace any of these terms with someone else. We become the same, but when we become the same, there's no one different in here. So it's not same as defined by difference. We become like Diotima, but no one in here is unlike. So there is some sort of third term needed. It's not just greater and lesser. If there was two, then sure. But for it to be a mean analogy, we require another idea. But in our search for this third idea in this triad category of understanding terms, we're using whole, but it's already taken. But it's defined differently as a duad. So we want whole, but in a different kind of a way, where it's nothing to do with parts. It's to do with the wholeness of being. In a learning tradition. We want same, but it's already used over here as the greater of these pairs. But we want same used in a different way, in that it's not same because there's no one different. There is no difference. There's no one unlike in that mean analogy as a principle referring to its completion. In other words, we're taking all of these greater terms that are already taken, but redefining them in a new way. And the thing that makes it different is it's this that has nothing to do with this. It's the greater that has nothing to do with the lesser. But you know what's fun about this new way of defining it? We already have a picture for it. Here, this Venn diagram of whole and parts already exists. For there to be two ideas, there has to be something different. There has to be a part of the part that doesn't touch the whole, a part of the whole that doesn't touch the part, but there has to be an overlap for them to function together to create things. We understood ignorance as down here, the parts in opposition to the whole. We understood wisdom as the knowingness model and the understanding activity. But we have this part here. That's the whole that is different from this whole because look how messy it is. This part here is still a whole, but it's a whole with parts. So we're using this idea of whole but defining it differently from wisdom, or the second hypothesis, by saying it's a different kind of a whole that is not a whole of parts. But this model also applies to same and different, like and unlike, all of the duads of understanding, the duad selfers. So we need a term that unifies all of those greater terms, but defined differently from the way it's normally used. In other words, lesser, greater, ultimate. Therefore, by using our understanding to reflect on what understanding uses, the Lego pieces, we can understand the cause of all problems, this applied to this, understood with this, either as a line or a hatred, disconnection, conflict, belief in materialism, model and activity. We can understand our excellence, the greater, applied to these monads, goodnesses, which is defined as either the highest positives of both as the model, or the using of the model in understanding to providentially affect the lesser. So using the greater to help the lesser, understanding. To know it all at once. So again, the greater of these monads understood with these duads. And finally, the question that's been on our mind for for a few weeks, for a few episodes, because it's in the book. What is the ultimate version of justice, beauty, goodness, excellence, benefit? And how can we understand them with these pairs? That's been our question. Ultimate because it's a new way of being, that if Jesus represents the lesser belief, Socrates represents the greater philosophy, even these two guys would become a follower of this kind of a person. Also, it dooms all other ways of being. What's another way of saying that? It's the ultimate. Our goal. Now, earlier in the text, Jesus said, or Socrates said, no longer. There is a purpose to us. Now we can therefore apply this, what we've been saying, to every individual. In other words, our job is to reflect on this model of understanding and use it to purify the lesser, perfect the greater, and then reach the ultimate. Our purpose, our goal. Or Socrates says, you know what else? It's worth doing and sharing it with everyone because there is an ultimate purpose to mankind. Mankind as a whole is part of this struggle. Notice whole and part. Will you think using these terms? Just a little aside. Mankind as a whole is part of the struggle to know the self. It is a cosmic dance of meaning that ends. There is an end when there is nothing left to learn. The race of man ends in that state, no longer of man, but that to which he has joined himself. So Socrates gave us a clue. The ultimate goal of man, individually and collectively, ultimate goal, is to upgrade from what we normally consider mankind to some ultimate. If we normally consider us as a part of a whole with a bunch of differences, unlike each other, always running around in motion, always in time, is there a new way of understanding the greater that is transcendent of the lesser? Or in other words, what we have understood as the ultimate expression of justice, beauty, goodness, benefit, reality, etc. Our ultimate goal. Therefore, have we understood the ultimate goal of mankind. So we are no longer reflecting on ourselves as that kind of way, stuck in here, our battles between ignorance and wisdom, but this section at the top, reflecting on not the model of mind and how it's, because you could say, well, all human conflict is simply a war on mind. Belief and materialism, the establishment right and the establishment left, in opposition to those who use their mind for understanding and seek a model that unifies all and benefits all. Universal basic income, universal healthcare, universal sharing of technology to meet everyone's human needs universally. Notice, universal. All of these objectively good ideas have the word universal. That's what it means to be a principle. Universal laws, not for everyone, not just the poor people, where the rich people can do all their crimes. No, fuck that. Universal. Housing, universal housing. Maybe some people can be homeless. No, fuck that. Universal dignity. Some people can be slaves, child labor and stuff. Fuck that. Notice, all of these people who are trying to keep the status quo of ignorance and belief alive are all believers. They never ever have an argument to show how it's universally beneficial because they are believers in opposition to what's universal and what's beneficial. That's why it's all culture war, horseshit, gossip, distractions. Don't think about the universal model. Think about shapes and colors. Look at what Tom Cruise is doing. Look at what the trans people are doing. Look at what gay people are doing. All culture war is a distraction from the realization that everything good uses the word universal. That's the model. The apprehension of that model is our excellence. It's the penultimate spiritual experience of the whole of all parts universally. Understanding is the activity of it. When you're blocked from understanding, it's because we also, as human beings, gain a belief from childhood. Therefore, we all have to perfect our understanding by reverting upon the model, as we're doing here, and purify any false beliefs that get in the way of that. Anything else is gossip, bullshit, distractions. Video games are causing... No. Universal healthcare, universal housing, universal income, universal principles, universal philosophical midwifery for everyone, true education, not education for the rich and fuck you for the poor, universal human dignity, not genociding people you don't like, fuck you. No, forget about universal. Look at particulars. Look at this part. Oh, look at their sexual parts. Look at that person. It's a trans person. Look at this part. Look at that part. Fuck you, universal. Non-physical reflection. Not physical parts, gossip. Non-physical. Non-physical. Oh, you can't put this model in a physical test tube, so it doesn't exist. Fuck you. Can you put your mind in a test tube? Can you put beauty in a test tube? Can you put justice in a test tube? Can you put whole in a test tube? Can you put part? Can you put anything in this list that is the building blocks of all perception, experience, understanding, and existence in a fucking test tube? You can't. But you know what you can't do? You can't have a test tube without these things. A test tube is a whole of the glass parts. Same test tube compared to a different Bunsen burner. It has to exist in time. These are the principles that you are using to reject principles, materialists. Or the principles that you are using to reject universal, helping everyone, belief-based people. Notice, always universal. That's what a principle is. Whole is always over everything. 1 and 1 is 2 for everything, over the whole. Beauty exists all over the place. So all fascism and injustice in the world is some sort of rejection of the universal or whole. That's culture war bullshit. That's gossip. look at physical shapes and colors, reject the use of mind to reflect on universal principles. Therefore, here's a good cheat code or a hack. If you want to establish a true political party or true justice, just use the word universal in front of everything. What do you think about healthcare? Well, I think some people should suffer and die because they're no. How about universal healthcare? What do you think about income? Well, I think some people should starve and not get to participate in. No. How about universal income? Now, easy. Throw the word universal in front of everything. Good. Done. That's only half of the game. You also have to that will also surface our false beliefs. Every single human clan that has an ignorance and hatred and conflict against universal goodness will come to light and say, I don't think so. Some people are lazy. Some people are black. Some people are women. Some people are not my religion. Those people need to suffer and die. And they will be reflecting the same kind of injustice their parents dumped on their asses when they were little babies, when they were children. And their parents did it to them because their parents' parents did it to them, and their parents to their parents, and their parents, and their parents, all the way back to the cave. We are in a lineage of human ignorance, passed through family clans, based on imitations, which is the lesser or distorted model of the greater. So as we become rational as a society because we think mankind is worth saving, all we have to do is throw the word universal in front of everything and address everything in opposition. That's our job as a race. Our job as a human, our human purpose or destiny or reason for being is to put an end to all, here it is, page 128. Man is in a cycle of reincarnation because we are here to learn. Would you say that what man must learn is to end the cycle of all clan beliefs and then go on to know, and at the same time, go on to know himself? You have to do both. You can't say universal principles for all and ignore the fact that fascist, psychopath, sadistic, warmongering fuckers will come out of the woodwork and try to kill you. We killed Socrates. Every individual kills their own greatness. Self-sabotage. Cycles of violence. The lesser, beliefs and materialism, has to be in opposition to the greater. Otherwise, the parts would just join with the whole. The lesser would want to be the greater. Why don't we want to be the greater? Why don't we want a universally utopian world? Someone in chat said you can't have a utopia. What the fuck does he know? And seeing as he doesn't know, why did he, with an absence of any knowledge, why did he fall on the lesser side? Why do people, when there's a conflict, side with the bullies? Why do when some right-wing fascist says something half rational like, well, I think we should all have healthcare, why does everyone applaud? You gotta hand it to them. You don't hand it to them. Everything they've said is wrong and they stumble upon one thing that's almost right and you hand it to them? We have to understand that the cognitive function of the right and religion and every human being who is raised in a family of belief is in opposition to what's universally beneficial and universally true and universally good. In fact, all of the monads. The lesser is opposition. All we have to do is throw the word universal in front of all of these words and we've got a just society. Universal justice. Is it justice if some people? Nope. Is it beautiful if some? Nope. Does it benefit everyone if some people? Nope. Universal. It's a hack.
I think it's so awesome.
Yeah, it's an awesome hack.
Making ice cream's a good and courageous thing.
As is what we're doing, Emma. As is what we're doing here. So, human problems is a conflict of mind, a war against mind by the imitation of mind belief and materialism. The war is won when we understand the root of that opposition and can end all clan beliefs, and we can share universal understanding of the universal principles of reality that universally benefit all. Universal justice, goodness, excellence. The name of being able to experience that model as a whole out of time is wisdom. Is knowledge. Its activity is understanding. So even those who haven't had an experience of that yet and are still wonderful people are wonderful because they use understanding. That's what makes them the best. The worst are the most attached to their ignorance. I'm sexist, but haven't you seen women are all right? Well, my daddy says so, and he's the bestest, and I'm gonna fight. And if there's any woman who shows herself to be capable or smarter than me, I will beat her up. Why? Because my daddy says so? And I'm a loyal follower. I always heard you gotta follow your beliefs. You gotta believe in yourself. You gotta be true to your beliefs. Fuck that. Be true to universal principles. So the greatest people, we're not all the same. Not everyone can run at the same speed as Usain Bolt. There are better people out there, but we can become better ourselves by listening to them and learning from them. And what makes them better? Understanding. How do they perfect their understanding? They're reflecting on universal principles and causes and preconditions. What's that also? As well as an excellence that benefits everyone, it's also a meditation. It's a win-win-win.
It's a win-win.
Win-win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win-win.
Because it's meditation, it's learning, it's perfecting your excellence, it benefits everyone, and you become a beautiful person that inspires everyone. It's a
win-win-win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win-win.
All checks out.
All checks out.
Bless you. Excuse you. Bless you.
Bless you and excuse you, everyone, because we're all in this. This is the nature of mankind's problems. Now, or the war between wisdom and ignorance. We've understood it. We've understood them as a model and activity of both. We've understood why it's an opposition. We've understood that it's universal. It's never ever a blame or shame game. Meaning we all have the same purpose to wake up to understanding and apply the dialectic to remove our problems through midwifery and dream analysis and perfect our wisdom through this reflecting on the model or philosophy, true philosophy. But what about this? Who's doing this? Who's being reincarnated into mankind to help perfect our race? Because there's a purpose for our race. What is the whole that's not parts? What's the self doing this? In other words, if this is the struggle of mankind, the war between wisdom and ignorance, mankind fulfills his purpose to read the book when we end the cycle of all clan beliefs to go on to know self. Or, say it another way, in a state no longer of man, but that to which he has joined himself. What are we joining with? Self. What are we knowing? Self. What are we ending? All clan beliefs. The war between wisdom and ignorance. No longer looking at himself of man, but okay, where are we up to in the text? Let's look for boom. but a new category of human beings that dooms all other previous ones, a new vision, a new philosophy, that is a new idea of man, that is a combination of divine and man, that is mankind no longer reflecting on himself as man, but as a god whose activity is in the sphere of the new man. So, model and activity, not the model and activity of knowing and understanding in wisdom, but God. What's the highest idea of God? Self. Right? Even if you have a shittier version, like God is some jealous whatever, that's still a person or still an entity. He still has a selfhood. So there's still an idea of self beyond your idea of God. He's still a one, right? To have a oneness of parts, you need a higher idea of one. So the highest idea of God is self. So therefore, man reflecting on himself as God, self. And an activity is in this sphere here. So a new kind of reflection that's like understanding and reflecting on knowing for wisdom, that's like the activity of materialists or dualists that are reflecting on their personal beliefs, which is ignorance. But the purpose or the new category of man that even philosophers like Socrates and believers like Jesus would become followers of, because they realize that they are all lesser, because this is the ultimate. The ultimate goal of man, the ultimate goal of individuals is self, using their activity to reflect on themselves as self. God. The whole, that's not parts. The ultimate. Bringing our ultimate excellence, goodness, and benefit. The use of these words together as a one, but defined differently from how they were used in the prior ways of being in relation to its lesser. It's not a whole of all parts, it's a whole that transcends parts. It's not a same that incorporates all difference, the greatest kind of sameness. No, it's a same that isn't touched by difference. It's likeness that's not touched by unlikeness. It's rest that's not touched by motion. It's freedom or infinity or unlimited that's not touched by, like numbers are a series of limits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's infinite in that it's an infinite expression of limits. Space, same thing. This point of space, this point of space, but it's infinite. This kind of infinite doesn't have a series of limits. It's free, it's unlimited, it's infinite in that it can't be limited. There are no limits. It's out of time, it's the cause of everything in time, but it's not touched by time, it's not diminished by time. In other words, it's a state of being of self that you can never fall out of. It's eternal, to be as eternal and godlike and a friend of the gods as any man can be, to quote Diotima, talking about the movement from the truth of reality and beauty to true excellence. That's our goal. That's the new class of man. That is able to not just doom all others, but because it is an understanding of that model and an activity of that model, it can look down and midwife our ignorance, purify our false beliefs, but also midwife or purify people who've identified with wisdom. Taoists. This is the greatest experience. There can't be anything greater. Sure. But it's still an experience. You're still... Do you want to understand what experience is? No. All thoughts are illusion. That's a lie. Add understanding. You can still have your states of being, but add the logos. That's what you're here for. That's learning. And it is a meditation. By the way, that brilliant light of being you've experienced, that you've decided is the self and the end and enlightenment, is it a whole of all parts? Are they two different ideas? Therefore, there's an overlap, but also a part of whole that's not part? What would it be like to see the whole without parts? Or another way of going, what's experiencing that luminosity? Or another way of going, what's the cause? If that's oneness, goodness, and truth, does oneness require the idea of one? Does truth require true? Does goodness require good? And finally, what we've seen is the ultimate word in this, for this, is a union of all of those greater terms. In other words, it's lesser, greater to what? Whole? Yes, but also same, but also finished, but also we're all like each other now, but also it's all of them together. Ultimate is defined by all of these as one idea. Defined differently from everything that they've been used in experience. Therefore, any spiritual tradition that is based on experience and not understanding is going to be blocked from moving into this ultimate state of man. Meaning we will face counterattacks from not just believers and materialists, but also the wise, philosophers, Taoists, Buddhists, people who've had a taste of enlightenment, but without anyone who has not been perfecting their understanding along the way. But that's fine. That's another expression of a clan belief. What's a clan belief? Oh, you can't know it. It's only an experience. All thoughts are a distraction. All thoughts are an illusion. It's all Maya. Now, this idea of ultimate that incorporates all of those high terms, and the way of seeing it is through mean analogy to give us the triad Lego pieces for understanding, lesser, greater, ultimate. Here is an idea. If you've ever done film or photography or any kind of art, you may have come across the idea of the golden ratio or the Fibonacci sequence. A is to B, so it's a mean analogy. In other words, it's not king is to sheep as king is to subjects as shepherd is to sheep. So that's talking about this relationship, but comparing it, that's analogy. A mean analogy is when Diotima is to Socrates and Socrates does double duty. So it's an even more simple version of an analogy because this word is this middle term is the same. So you can even simplify it as A is to B is to C. Now you can even simplify it even further. The most simple version of creation possible is what you've come across maybe in film or photography or whatever. When you organize a film shot or a photo, you start by saying it's the rule of thirds. So divide it into thirds. But actually it's not. If you've got a better teacher, they'll say actually it's the golden ratio. It's a little bit less than a third. It's 61%. So take about 61% way along here and here. So 61%, giving it 38 point something percent on this side. Put your character here. This will look the most beautiful. Organize your song with the bridge here. The significant turning point in the song. Write your story so the climax is here. Why is that? Why is this most aesthetically appealing? Aesthetically? Why is it most beautiful? Because an even more simple analogy than this, A is to B is to A plus B. Still the simplest analogy, mean analogy, but now we've only got two terms. That ratio is 60%, 61% by the way. So 1 is to 1.6, was it 61? As, actually start this way. 61.8 is to 1 as 1 is to 1.618. So notice, 6.18 plus 1 is 1.618. The 61.8%. So therefore, what's the next one? Well, it's going to be 6.18 plus 1, 2.618. In other words, you take the two prior terms and you make the next term. A to B is to A plus B. If this is lesser, if this is greater, and this is whole or ultimate, how does that answer some questions that we have? Why does this ultimate stage of man doom all others? How does this ultimate term incorporate all of these ideas? But in a new way where it's not in opposition, it's not greater to lesser, it's not, hey, whole is defined as the greater from the part. No. It's a kind of whole that how can we use this? Now, the easy way of going is saying, well, this is actually the description of wisdom because it's A plus B. In other words, whole and part. The greatest whole of the greatest parts is the understanding of the brilliant light of being, which is the penultimate. But we don't want to use it that way. We could say understanding is to knowing is to wisdom, because that's both together. But we don't want to use it that way either. We want to use this idea to redefine whole. You have to go back to that example. Diotima, or Socrates to Diotima. But the kind of whole that we are incorporates both, because we are now teacher and student. I thought that was going to go somewhere. Because that is lesser, greater, ultimate. Well, you could say, well, hang on a second. If the lesser we understood as human ignorance, the greater was wisdom, then the new way of being, the ultimate, has to be able to midwife or be a dialectician to both people's ignorances and people's enlightenment experiences. You have to be a true guru. Help people remove their false beliefs, their false model and activity. Help people perfect their experience of being and their understanding of it. So it has to incorporate both. It's a kind of whole that incorporates both. While transcending both. And that's where this is where the understanding of 61.8 is to 1 as 1 is to 1.618 comes in. Because because each of these numbers are incommensurate, or 1.8 dot 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 dot. It's not an integer. 1 is an integer. 6.18. In other words, they're incommensurate. They're different levels. Living in ignorance, you're disconnected from the higher level. Wisdom is nothing to do with belief in images. That's why gossip is used as a distraction by those who are trying to stop human beings from using the word universal. Universal healthcare, universal income, universal housing, universal laws, universal benefit, universal understanding, universal education. Not hard, just pure the word universal in. Because universal is not about physical appearances. What color dress you're wearing, what color flag you're flying, what color tie you're wearing. This incorporates both. Kind of ultimate state of being that can perfect your understanding of the greater to the ultimate and also purify your false beliefs. All right, fine, we can use it there. But that means we still have a question. How can we understand the word ultimate being one word that accounts for all of these greater terms? And all of them defined differently from every other definition or use or experience of anything else. Everything you've experienced is a whole of parts, is same and different, is like and unlike, etc. And even if it's a whole of all parts. Even if it's out of time, you're experiencing that which plays out through time in parts. So it's all of these words together, defined in a unique way, not touched by the lesser. And our question is, how can you have one word that incorporates for all of them? Because that's literally what we need to understand the self and this new way of being. It's one self. It's not a many terms, whole, part, same. It is, but they're all one. And it has to include all of them because it is expressed as the model. Its shadow is whole, same, part, like, etc. So it has to come from somewhere. So whatever this one is, it has to be an incorporation of all of those ultimate terms or greater terms that is experienced here in combination with its parts. So it's a whole of all parts. So you get to experience it, you get to understand it, you get to break it down by rubbing it up against its correlate or pair. But we're experiencing it as a wholeness rubbed against its pair. We're understanding it in terms of its pair. Our ignorance or our human problems that we need to wake up to do this work is a rejection of those two in belief and our activities based on belief. But for it to be experienced as that way, either greater in its truthful way or its false way, lesser way, means that its cause, its primary one cause, that one has to include within it same, like, whole, out of time, rest, infinite. Otherwise, where is the greater coming from? We can see where the lesser is coming from. It's its pair opposite, or its pair term that you can rub it up against to understand it or experience it. So in other words, the one creates the oneness, which creates the manyness, or the pure whole creates the whole experienced as parts that creates parts. But somehow inherent in the one self or God is everything you need for that whole same difference as one thing. That's what we're trying to put together. How can you have an idea that incorporates all of these greater terms? Because that's what the word ultimate means. All of them together as one. So that, and the knowing of that and the functioning through it is ultimate justice, ultimate beauty, ultimate goodness or good, ultimate benefit, ultimate excellence, ultimate reality, ultimate oneness or one, ultimate truth or true. We'll put truth on there as well. True, one, good. It's the ultimate true. It's the ultimate good. It's the ultimate one. But inherent in it in some mysterious way is everything else, or the logos. Because this is the word for this model of understanding, and the model of knowing is logos. But also Socrates said in the book, you know what's doing it? The logos. So the model or ousia and the logos is actually one thing. And it's here because it's the logos of self that unfolds and creates each moment and creates each dream and knows the model as a whole, so it makes every moment fit. So now we're bringing it into how it unfolds through time from the ultimate through the greater model into its lesser or parts. That's the creation of every moment in time. And one way of being able to recognize and perceive that is to recognize that when you go to sleep, there's a darkness of sleep, and then there is a coming into being of a dream, and then the dream comes out of being. There's an emerging and returning. Meaning this ability to perceive the one that we understand as the ultimate, or all of these, defined in a different way than wisdom. This is the instant. So the new way of being, Socrates is saying, is mankind transcending the war between wisdom and ignorance, the war against mind by belief, to reflect on himself as the one self, God. The instant between each moments that can instantly know the model and instantly know the parts and instantly function through the logos providentially to make every part exactly fitting the previous moment, but also guide you to your ultimate goal, which is wisdom and purifying the ignorance. So your dreams are about your false beliefs about yourself, and can give you states of high states of mind that can help you perfect your reading and your wisdom. Reading books like anything translated by Juan Balboa, pretty much. So Socrates, dialogues, and anything written by Pierre Grimes, because they reflect the logos. Just as to perfect your understanding of chemistry, you better read a chemistry book. So if this is the logos, if the self, it can be also understood as the logos, and that's the unfolding principle, the guiding principle, and the returning principle. And logos as a whole is the model of knowing. Logos as an activity is understanding. Pathologos is belief and the activity from belief. Sick logos in opposition to the logos. Then logos is the way of being of self. That is expressed as the brilliant light of being, which is the model that creates the physical world of becoming. And it's through perfecting the logos, which we can do as through understanding in time, knowing it as a whole in being, and instant, knowing it as the instant, that we can awaken the new category of man that will make all other ones redundant, because it includes all while transcending them. Transcending them, that's the principle of incommensurate. In other words, each of these terms don't fit together. They're a different level, but also it's a different level that can also account for everything prior, which is the golden analogy. Therefore, the golden analogy, or the phi ratio, phi is the name for that ratio, is the mathematical understanding of the logos that accounts for our return, the unfolding and the return, and the ultimate way of being self logos. So that's where we are. Have I mentioned that this book fucking bangs?
I don't know, whatever. Awesome. Wow. Ow, 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 ow.
Bless you. Bless you. Excuse you. That could
Great. S.
Imagine people changing their positions and for the better.
We can change our positions and improve for the better.
Here we go.
Because
Okay, go ahead, man. Well, you're doing your best.
we're doing our best in reading this book, and now we have a model for it. Good. Should I keep reading? Okay, so another review today, but we're bringing in the idea of the phi ratio. We're recapping it, bringing to light our questions. How the heck does the ultimate include all of them? We know it has to, because if it's not including all of them, it wouldn't be one. It'd be a manyness. But also it has to account for the manyness that unfolds. So a review, again, of everything we're up to date with our questions. What is the ultimate? How do we feel it? How do we recognize it? How does this phi ratio come into play? And, well, how good would it feel to be in it? The ultimate state of being. Pretty neat. Keep in mind, the hack for good governance, throw the word universal in front of everything. What's your position on healthcare? Universal. What's your position on income? Universal. What's your position on whether or not CEOs get to have more money than everyone else? Oh, universal. But aren't the CEOs better? You mean the people bombing children for profit? No, they're not better. But don't they create jobs? You mean the people who are taking away all jobs and replacing it by AI, but also by jobs? They don't have a job. But jobs are good. Then why don't all the rich people buy the fucking jobs? It's not good. Jobs mean slave to the rich person, you fucker. So how about universal money for everyone? But aren't they better? Says who? God? Ah, beliefs, my friend. So everything against universal goodness is an expression of a clan belief, and the literal purpose of human beings as a society is to understand and address and end all versions of clan beliefs. Sexist, racist, chauvinistic, anything against universal benefit will surface when we say, hey, the truth is universal. That's what it means, truth. Goodness has to be universally good. That's what it means. No, but I want to hurt women because sexism. Says who? My family clan? Exactly. Let's talk about it. Let's see where it originated from, what your great-grandparents were like, and their great-grandparents, and where it goes back to. And therefore, we can put an end to the war of belief and ignorance against universal principles of understanding and wisdom, goodness, and now we can start to reflect on ourselves as God. So mankind's journey, back to the text, finishes when he's no longer reflecting on himself as man, but as a God. That activity is in the sphere of the new man. What sphere? This sphere. Actually, this part here. Sure, help people who are developing through their states of enlightenment. Great. Help people who are blocked from even that. Beliefs. Yep, great. Because it is incorporating of while transcending it incommensurately, it still incorporates what came before. Which makes sense, because otherwise, why the fuck would we be here? Why would we experience all the terribleness of ignorance against universal principles, capitalism, fascism, war, genocide? Why would we be born into families where we have to get a belief and have to be suffering through ignorance? If we don't bring something back with us, it would not be justice if it was just punishment. There has to be a way out of our badness, lesser of that, ignorance, a way of perfecting and getting the goodness, greater of that, and a reason for having gone through that process, both of them together. There has to be a reason. The learning and nurture of what's involved in purification, perfection, the dialectic, so that we can take this dialectic, the mastery or art of the logos, back with us to the one self. So that's the next question. What's the significance of returning to the ultimate, the instant, God, the one, the self, with the logos and the art of dialectic in your back pocket? What's the significance? What would make all of this worth it? That's our question. This learning and nurture of the art of the dialectic. Why? Just to return to the instant before each moment? To become a dream maker ourselves? To be the creator God of each instant? Why? And why leaving just to return? Only to come back with the dialectic in our back pocket? What's the point of all existence? And you? That's our question. We'll take that back with us as we continue to read this amazing banger of a dialogue between Sock, the big dog, and JC, the most liked on Instagram dog. I don't know. He features in all the Facebook AI slop. Jesus saving kittens and stuff. So the two primary figures of human civilization, at least Western civilization, Sock and JC, banger of a conversation between them. Questions about this ultimate state of man, how we can incorporate all these higher terms together in one, but also what's the point of going through this whole process only to return with nothing other than the art of dialectic in our back pocket. What does that do to the self? Why is the self going through this training? Why does Goku go out and wear weighted clothing to go through all this extra effort and suffering? What happens when he takes them off? Has he benefited? What did he learn from having gone through that process? What's the meaning of all of this only to return to the self? That's the cause of the whole of parts and the whole and parts. What's the point of returning through ignorance and wisdom to the self? With the art of dialectic, the only thing we can take with us in our back pocket? I hope you're just as puzzled as I am, because oh my god, what a question. This book's a banger.
Disgusting. I'm so.
So I don't know. I don't know.
Do a poggers.
Do a poggers. Whoop. Inappropriate sound drops at the end. I apologize. I am very
Disgusting. I'm so disgusted.
so disgusted in
you
my
just
sound
blow
drops
in from Stupid Town.
because I blew in from Stupid Town with those drops.
Hey man.
Hey man,
So I don't know.
I don't know. Thank you for joining me.
These absolute dullards, borderline chimps who want
You
to kiss a
dullards.
fox.
You borderline chimps who want to kiss a fox. That's not you. You're actually
Making ice cream's a good and courageous thing.
foul on my sound drops at the end. But thank you for joining me. I hope you're puzzled. What's the whole point of this? Only to return with the logos of the self. But also, what would it be like to spend your time reflecting on yourself as God? Properly though, not made up belief nonsense. And can that help us understand why creation and why the return through ignorance and wisdom? Mirroring the return from the moment through ignorance, if you're attached to the moment, wisdom, the model of the whole, to the instant. Just as our whole lives, are our whole lives an analogical expression of what's happening at every single moment? If so, how can we see it all and be it all? Thank you for joining me. Feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitch, join the Discord. If you want to donate to the channel, it's greatly appreciated. You can even find a PDF of the text we're reading below. Thank you so much, and I will hope to see you in the next one. The next one, I said. See you in the next one.